LiberalViewer presents.
So President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, has become famous in the last few years for some really obfuscatory gibberish, and he did not disappoint when he appeared on Como Primetime last night to respond to the growing intelligence whistleblower scandal in which Trump supposedly made an improper promise to a world leader, possibly the leader of the Ukraine, which a whistleblower is trying to expose, as Chris Cuomo explained in the introduction to his program here.
This whistleblower story is blowing up, and it's doing so on our watch. There is now breaking news on that urgent complaint about President Trump. It involves Ukraine. This comes from the Washington Post. You might remember House Democrats have been examining whether the president and his attorney, Rudy Giuliani, sought to manipulate the Ukrainian government into helping the Trump re-election campaign. They were doing that before this complaint. Now, something that may seem confusing as you go through the facts tonight is that the subject phone call that we now know took place in this time frame that people are looking at. When this complaint came in, who did the president speak to? Who was a leader at that time? He spoke to the president of Ukraine. Now, that call was already the subject of curiosity by Congress because they were looking into these earlier efforts, in part announced by Mr. Giuliani about his intentions of trying to get to Ukraine to figure out some things about some of Mr. Trump's political opponents. So that's where it stands. We happen to have the man in the middle tonight, the president's counselor, former mayor Rudy Giuliani. Good to have you on the show.
I'm glad I'm on tonight because what you just said is totally erroneous.
Why does Giuliani do that creepy laugh whenever he's introduced? In any case, Cuomo started off pretty respectfully, letting Giuliani give his talking points for several minutes about how the real scandal has to do with Joe Biden forcing the dismissal of a prosecutor investigating his son Hunter, but when Cuomo pushed back a little, it led to this amazing Giuliani self-contradiction within 30 seconds that you can see here.
The prosecutor that was removed, which was the original intrigue on Joe Biden, that prosecutor was removed, first of all, by consensus of a multiple of Western countries, and it was after Hunter Biden stuff was done. Yeah, look, you should have your hand on your face. You know why? This is all a distraction from what I asked you for.
No, it isn't a distraction, Chris. What you just said is totally wrong.
It's not what I just...
completely wrong.
It is totally correct and in the factual timeline. The prosecutor
Chris, you don't know what happened. I know what happened.
How do you know and I don't know?
You're just repeating spin. The prosecutor...
but you don't, right? You're not spinning anything. Go ahead.
I'm not spinning a damn thing.
Okay.
I'm telling you the truth.
Okay.
The prosecutor was removed because he was investigating the son, and he was investigating Soros's charity, or whatever the hell it was, Antac. The new prosecutor that came in dismissed both cases. And
the prosecutor who was pushed out was unanimously seen as corrupt, by the way.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't unanimously seen as corrupt. That's an after-the-fact statement. The prosecutor...
What do you mean after-the-fact statement? Was he seen as corrupt or no?
You go look at Joe Biden, who probably is working with half the IQ that you and I have. If you listen to Joe Biden's tape, he convicts himself. He says, I told the president of the Ukraine, if you don't dismiss this guy, you're not going to get your $1.2 billion.
All right, so that's what you say Biden said to the Ukraine. Did you ask the Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden?
No, actually, I didn't. I asked the Ukraine to investigate the allegations that there was interference in the election of 2016 by the Ukrainians for the benefit of Hillary Clinton, for which there already is a court finding.
You never asked anything about Hunter Biden. You never asked anything about Joe Biden.
The only thing I asked about Joe Biden is to get to the bottom of how it was that Lutsenko, who was appointed, dismissed the case against Antac.
So you did ask Ukraine to look into Joe Biden?
Of course I did.
You just said you didn't.
No, I didn't.
Wow. Amazing. Giuliani's self-immolation there was so spectacular that all three of the cable news networks played at least part of it within the first 10 minutes of their first straight news programs in the morning, including, of course, CNN, which played this teaser clip of Giuliani's admission in the first minute of CNN Newsroom here.
You want to cover some ridiculous charge that I urged the Ukrainian government to investigate corruption. Well, I did, and I'm proud of it.
And then, just a couple minutes later, CNN showed what seemed like the most logical way to show Giuliani's self-contradiction within 30 seconds here.
Did you ask the Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden?
No, actually, I didn't. I asked the Ukraine to investigate the allegations that there was interference in the election of 2016 by the Ukrainians for the benefit of Hillary Clinton, for which there already is a
You
court
never asked
finding.
anything about Hunter Biden. You never asked anything about Joe Biden.
The
and
only
his
thing
role
I
with the
asked about
prosecutor.
Joe Biden is to get to the bottom of how it was that Lutsenko, who was appointed, dismissed the case against Antak.
So you did ask Ukraine to look into Joe Biden?
Of course I did.
You just said you didn't.
Still amazing. So, as you might expect, MSNBC also reported on the whistleblower story in that same time slot, showing this great timeline of events that includes the interesting fact that Vice President Mike Pence may have played a role at a September 1st meeting, and finally, 7 minutes into the program, getting to that same clip, edited the same way you can see here.
Did you ask the Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden?
No, actually, I didn't. I asked the Ukraine to investigate the allegations that there was interference in the election of 2016 by the Ukrainians for the benefit of Hillary Clinton, for which there already is a court
never asked
finding.
anything about Hunter Biden. You never asked anything about Joe Biden.
The
and
only
his
thing
role
I
with the
asked about
prosecutor.
Joe Biden is to get to the bottom of how it was that Lutsenko, who was appointed, dismissed the case against Antak.
So you did ask Ukraine to look into Joe Biden?
Of course I did.
You just said you didn't.
Now, Fox News also covered the whistleblower story, but spun it to emphasize the White House position, including reading Trump's tweets before getting to the incredible edit of the Cuomo interview created by splicing together two different Giuliani clips from almost 4 minutes apart in the attempt to make Giuliani look coherent over here.
In the course of investigating that, I found out this incredible story about Joe Biden, that he bribed the president of the Ukraine in order to fire a prosecutor who was investigating his son. That is an astounding scandal of major proportions, which all of you have covered up for about 5 or 6 months.
So you did ask Ukraine to look into Joe Biden?
Of course I did.
After harping all week on what the New York Times left out of its Kavanaugh book excerpt, it takes a lot of chutzpah to actually air that edit as news, I think, but I want to know what you think. Is there any way to journalistically justify the way Fox News edited out Rudy Giuliani contradicting himself within 30 seconds? And on the scandal itself? If it turns out Trump held up U.S. aid to the Ukraine to try to get them to give him dirt on Joe Biden, what should be the consequences?
YouTube, you decide.